Forget everything you think you know about surviving cold weather conditions in extreme environments. Right now, in federal prisons across the northern United States, Black inmates are staying comfortable at temperatures that would send most people straight to the hospital emergency room. Meanwhile, guards sitting in heated stations are shivering through their entire work shifts. The difference has nothing to do with toughness, genetics, or willpower. It has everything to do with knowledge passed down through generations that most people have never heard of. These methods are so simple that engineers are actually studying them. Here is the thing about prison heating systems. They exist on paper. Regulations say facilities must maintain minimum temperatures for inmate welfare and safety at all times. Reality tells a different story. Heating systems fail constantly during the winter months. Vents get blocked by debris and years of neglect. Budget cuts leave radiators that barely function during the coldest months. When temperatures outside drop to -20 degrees, inside temperatures in some cell blocks hover around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That is cold enough to see your breath hanging in the air all night long. Cold enough to make restful sleep nearly impossible. Cold enough to kill someone with underlying health problems or a weakened immune system. Yet certain inmates manage not just to survive these conditions, but to stay genuinely comfortable through the entire night. The techniques they use go back much further than the prison system itself. The first thing you need to understand is layering, not the way outdoor catalogs teach it, with moisture-wicking base layers and expensive insulated shells from name brands. Prison layering works with what you actually have available. 2 thin blankets. Beat 1 thick one every single time. Here is why that works so well. Trapped air between layers insulates better than dense material alone, the same principle that makes double-pane windows effective in cold climates. Inmates figured this out decades ago through trial and error. They fold one blanket lengthwise and wrap it around their torso like a tube. The second blanket goes over that, loose enough to create air pockets, but tight enough to stay put through the night. Temperature gain from this simple technique runs 8 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the difference between shivering all night and actually getting some real sleep. But blankets are just the starting point. Paper is where things get really interesting. Newspapers stuffed between your outer shirt and your undershirt add significant insulation without any bulk at all. Sounds primitive, right? The science behind it is absolutely real and well documented. Paper traps dead airspace the same way expensive goose down does in high-end jackets. It just does not look as fancy or cost hundreds of dollars at outdoor stores. Inmates call this technique layering up. One man I spoke with said his grandfather taught him the exact same trick for working tobacco fields in North Carolina winters back in the day. 3 generations of the same knowledge, still keeping people warm when nothing else works. Here is where it gets really clever. The feet are your biggest heat leak by far. Blood vessels run close to the surface of the skin there. Cold feet mean cold everything throughout your entire body. So inmates develop the sock within a sock method over years of careful experimentation. Put on one pair of thin socks first, then wrap your feet in plastic bags from the commissary. Put another pair of socks over that plastic layer. The plastic creates a vapor barrier that holds in warmth, while the outer sock provides additional insulation. It looks crude, but it is remarkably effective in practice. Temperature difference at the foot can hit 15 degrees Fahrenheit with this simple setup. Now, here is the catch. There is always a catch, right? Moisture is the enemy of warmth in cold conditions. Sweat trapped against your skin makes you colder, not warmer. Cotton holds moisture like a sponge, and it refuses to release that moisture quickly. Experienced inmates know to keep their base layer as dry as possible at all times. They change undershirts before bed if they sweated earlier. They let damp socks air out even when it is freezing cold. This careful attention to moisture management is the real difference between staying warm and waking up hypothermic. My grandfather used to say, Wet cold cuts through you twice, once from the wet and once from the cold. He was absolutely right about that. The veterans in these facilities take things even further than the basics. They learn that your body dumps heat through very specific points: the neck, the wrists, and the groin area. Major arteries run close to the surface in those spots. So plugging those leaks matters more than adding bulk everywhere else. A rolled-up t-shirt wrapped around your neck holds in more heat than an extra blanket on your legs. Strips of cloth tied around your wrists like bracelets keep warmth from bleeding out through your arms all night long. This is basic thermodynamics, dressed up in prison ingenuity and practical application. But individual techniques only get you so far when temperatures really drop to truly dangerous levels. Here is what nobody talks about in the mainstream media or survival guides. The most effective heating system in any cold weather prison costs nothing and requires no materials at all. It is other people. Your body generates roughly 100 watts of heat constantly throughout the day and night. That is basically a light bulb running around the clock without stopping. Put 4 people in a tight space and you have 400 watts of continuous warmth. Temperatures in a shared cell jump 15 to 20 degrees just from combined body heat alone. No blankets required for that boost. This is not new knowledge at all. Antarctic explorers used the same exact principle over a century ago during their dangerous expeditions to the South Pole. But in Black communities, this practice goes back much further than that. Slave quarters were deliberately underheated by design. Families survived by sleeping in close groups, rotating who slept on the edges where cold crept in throughout the night. That knowledge passed through generations without ever being written down in any book. Sharecroppers in Mississippi winters used it. Factory workers in Chicago tenements used it. And inmates in federal facilities use it today. Makes sense, right? When the system fails, you adapt or you suffer the consequences. Here is the thing about cultural knowledge that most people miss entirely. It does not get written down in textbooks or taught in classrooms anywhere. It passes through families, through communities, through shared experience and necessity over time. A technique that kept your great-grandmother alive in a one-room shack keeps you alive in a concrete cell 100 years later. The chain never breaks because survival knowledge has immediate consequences. Forget it and you suffer. Remember it and you make it through another night. Now, guards do not have this knowledge at all. Think about that for a second. They sit in heated booths with proper winter coats and insulated boots, and they still complain about the cold constantly. Meanwhile, inmates in thin jumpsuits and state-issued blankets sleep through the night without much trouble at all. The difference is not equipment or toughness. It is generations of learning how to survive when no one is coming to help you out. There is a breathing technique that experienced inmates use during the coldest nights of winter. It is a form of controlled breathing, slow, deep breaths through the nose and gentle exhalations through pursed lips. This does 2 important things for the body. First, it prevents hyperventilation, which dumps heat faster than you might expect. Second, it raises your core temperature slightly by improving oxygen circulation throughout the system. Buddhist monks have shown they can raise their body temperature through controlled breathing by several degrees in laboratory settings. Prison veterans worked out a simplified version of this technique through trial and error over many freezing nights. But here is the catch that trips people up. The mental component may matter more than the physical. When you are cold, your instinct is to tense up. Shoulders hunch, muscles clench, the jaw tightens. All that tension makes you colder because it restricts blood flow to the extremities. Experienced inmates learn to consciously relax in the cold. Let the shoulders drop, unclench the jaw, keep the hands loose. It feels counterintuitive, but relaxed muscles maintain circulation, and circulation keeps you warm. The body fights cold better when you stop fighting the body. There is a technique most people completely overlook, involving strategic positioning. Heat rises. The floor of any cell is the coldest spot in the room by far, so inmates elevate their sleeping surface using whatever materials they can find. They pile extra clothes under a thin mattress and prop up the corners with books or magazines. Even a few inches of elevation makes a measurable temperature difference through the night. Combine that elevation with the fetal sleeping position, and you reduce exposed surface area by roughly 30 to 40%. It is basic geometry working in your favor. The food timing trick is something most people never even consider or think about seriously. Your body generates heat through the process of digestion. That process is called thermogenesis. Eating a meal before bed raises your core temperature for several hours while your system processes the food you consumed. Inmates figured out that saving part of dinner to eat right before lights out extends warmth through the coldest hours of the night. Not a big meal at all, just enough to keep the digestive furnace running. Crackers work for this purpose. Peanut butter works better because of the fat content. Anything with fat or protein metabolizes more slowly and produces heat longer throughout the night. Here is something that surprised me when I learned it from people who lived through it. Talking helps. Conversation uses muscle movement. Your diaphragm moves. Your face moves. Even quiet talking generates a small amount of heat over time. More importantly, talking keeps your mind occupied with something other than the cold around you. When you focus on cold, you feel colder. When you focus on a conversation, a story, or a memory, the sensation of cold recedes into the background. Veterans tell younger inmates stories specifically to distract them from the temperature. It is group therapy and thermal management rolled into one simple practice. My grandfather used to say that cold cannot kill you if you refuse to let it win. That sounds like tough guy nonsense until you understand what he actually meant by it. Panic is the real danger in cold conditions. Panic makes you breathe fast, move frantically, and waste precious energy. Calm keeps you alive through the worst of it. The inmates who stay warmest are not the ones with the most blankets stacked up. They are the ones who mastered their own response to discomfort over time. They treat cold as a problem to solve, not a crisis to fear. Here is the real lesson buried in all this that most people miss entirely. Survival knowledge does not come from books or courses or expensive gear from outdoor stores. It comes from people who had no choice but to figure things out under pressure. Black Americans spent centuries surviving systems designed to ignore their comfort and sometimes their very lives. That pressure created knowledge that still works today. When a guard shivers in his heated booth, while an inmate sleeps warm in a freezing cell, you are watching the difference between theoretical protection and actual survival skill in action. The feet deserve special attention beyond the sock method mentioned earlier in this discussion. Experienced inmates know to keep their feet moving before sleep every night, wiggling toes, rotating ankles, flexing muscles. This pumps warm blood into the extremities before you settle in for the night. Then they position their feet carefully, often crossed at the ankles and tucked slightly. The position reduces exposure and keeps warmth concentrated where it matters. Simple movements that take 30 seconds but make hours of difference through the night ahead. There is also the handshake technique that older inmates teach younger ones in the coldest facilities. Before settling in for sleep, you rub your palms together vigorously for about 30 seconds or more. The friction generates heat that spreads through your hands and wrists. Then you immediately tuck your hands under your arms or between your thighs to trap the warmth. The warm hands help heat your core instead of losing their warmth to the cold air around you. Do this 3 or 4 times before sleep, and you will start the night warmer than you would otherwise. The wall technique is something experienced inmates use regularly. You lie facing the wall instead of facing the open cell. Walls absorb and radiate a small amount of heat throughout the night. More importantly, Facing the wall means the cold air from the cell opening does not hit your face directly. Your exhaled breath bounces off the wall and creates a small pocket of warmer air around you. Little things add up when temperatures drop to dangerous levels. Some inmates keep a small cloth to breathe through at night during the coldest hours. This does two things. First, it warms the air slightly before you inhale it into your lungs. Second, it prevents the moisture in your breath from condensing on your face and making you colder. A simple bandana or a torn strip of shirt works for this purpose. The difference is small but noticeable over hours of sleep. The timing of sleep matters more than most people realize. The coldest hours in any prison cell are between 3 and 5 in the morning. Experienced inmates adjust their sleep schedule when possible. They stay up later, sleep in shorter bursts, and save their deepest sleep for the hours when the cell is warmed slightly from body heat and the heating system. This is not always possible with prison schedules, but when it is, it makes a noticeable difference. The methods are simple and straightforward. Layer thin over thin, trap dead air space, protect your neck, wrists, and feet. Stay dry at all times. Share warmth with others. Control your breathing. Relax your muscles. Eat before sleeping. Elevate your body. Stay calm. None of this requires special equipment or expensive gear. All of it has been tested in the worst conditions humans have ever endured, and all of it was passed down through generations who understood that when no one is coming to save you, you save yourself. The guards have regulations and heating systems. The inmates have knowledge passed down through centuries of survival. At -20 degrees, knowledge wins every single time.